Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MOS Live Ask a Scientist. My name is Christina. I'll be serving as your moderator today. And although you can see my face now, you'll mostly be hearing my voice later as we share your questions with our educators today. And our educators are excited and they are going to be introducing themselves soon, and they'll be answering all the questions that you have about dinosaurs. If you would like to ask a question today, you can do so by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you are watching on Zoom. And don't forget to include your name and age if you would like a shout out. And if you need captions today and you are on Zoom, you can get those by selecting Show Captions after clicking on Close Captions. If you happen to be watching on YouTube or Facebook Live today, unfortunately, we will not be able to see your questions or comments, but we're so excited to have you join us today, and we do hope you enjoy the program. Well, with all of that being said, I'd like to invite our educators to turn on their camera, introduce themselves, and they're going to share an experience they've had actually going on a dino dig.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited you're here with us. My name is Janine. And the experience I had with a dinosaur dig, at least my favorite one I'm going to talk about, is a place called Egg Mountain. It's in Montana. The closest town is a place called Shoto, and it's about 2 hours outside of Bozeman, Montana. And this is a really famous fossil site for Maiasaur eggs. So Maiasaur, known as the good mother dinosaur. This is a nesting site that Jack Horner first found. And I was there almost 20 years ago, and we were looking for not Maiasaur, but Troodon. And Troodon is a dinosaur that's a small meat eater. Reminds a lot of people of Velociraptor. And we were looking for Troodon nesting sites for Troodon, but also Troodon fossils. So that's what our mission was, and that was summer, and it was just amazing to be out in the wide open areas of Montana, looking in these bone beds and trying to find fossils. I will say we didn't have giant amounts of success. We found lots of discarded bits of bones, but no like whole articulated fossils, which that's what I was hoping we would find. So yeah, Egg Mountain, Montana is an amazing fossil site.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she and her, and I've been on a couple dinosaur digs, actually always to the same place with some friends of mine who are paleontologists in Virginia. And we went out west, similar to where Janine was actually, except in Wyoming. And it's a place called Shell, Wyoming. It's something like population 73. That's when I was there a few years ago. It's about 2.5 hours east of Yellowstone, so northern central Wyoming. And there we have been uncovering over the past several years a long-necked dinosaur. This long-necked dinosaur, though, we're not totally sure what it is. It lived about 150 million years ago, but based on the bones that we found, mostly the bottom half of it, so leg bones, toe bones, actually some back and tail bones, vertebra as well. It doesn't look like a huge long-necked dinosaur. Like, we're not talking about like the 3 school bus or 2 school bus long dinosaur, but a bit smaller. So what's interesting is this one was probably maybe the length of a car or so. So it's either a new long-necked dinosaur or it's maybe a juvenile long-necked dinosaur, both of which would be absolutely amazing to see and to be able to find. And so we were supposed to go out again this past summer, but of course that wasn't able to happen. But I'm looking forward to going back hopefully next summer and pulling more of the same dinosaur, these bones out of the ground, because it does take a while to get them out.
Very cool. Thank you, Janine and Susan, for sharing those 2 really amazing experiences. And maybe later we can talk about how other people could do similar experiences if they want later on in the program. But to get us started, we actually have a local question that I thought would be fun to answer. So Jake, age 5, would like to know, have dinosaur fossils ever been found in Massachusetts?
And yes, they sure have. So the dinosaur fossils we found here in Massachusetts are trackways. And I have a trackway here because today I'm at the museum So if you look really close, you can see there's a footprint. It's got 1, 2, 3 toes, and it's sitting right here. It's about that big. So this is the kind of fossil we find here in Massachusetts, at least from dinosaur time. During dinosaur time and just afterwards, the conditions in Massachusetts weren't favorable for preserving bones. So the skeleton of dinosaurs who died in this area, their bones would just disintegrate. It was very swampy, and that area just doesn't preserve fossils well. But the footprints, making trackways, that's what we find. And we have a couple really famous fossil sites along the Connecticut River Valley that are all dinosaur trackways. In Connecticut, there's the Dinosaur Park area, which that's a small institution you can go visit. And there are hundreds and hundreds of dinosaur footprints at that site that you can go check out yourself. So that's what Massachusetts and New England is generally famous for when it comes to dinosaur fossils.
Yeah, one other thing just to mention that when talking about Massachusetts fossils also is it wasn't right for the fossils to be formed in the first place, but also if you look around the ground here, what you mostly see covering the ground is forest or cities or roads. There's not a lot of wide open area as well. And that's one of the reasons what that makes out west, where Janine and I went, so absolutely amazing, because you look around and it's just wide open rocks. And then the wind and the rain will weather away the top layers, which are the most recent layers, and will weather away so that you have rocks that are 100 million years old sitting right in front of you. Here in New England, most of what you see on the ground is relatively recent. You don't always get to see that far down. The Dinosaur State Park Jenny mentioned, they even found those fossils, I think, because they were doing like a road excavation or a building excavation. So we're just not looking for them as much here. And that's why out west is just so amazing for finding those fossils.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all those great details. And I think thinking maybe even outside of dinosaur fossils is even thinking about like, how do we know about these animals in terms of what they look like or what they sound like? And Cameron, age 5, would like to know, why do dinosaurs roar?
Why do dinosaurs roar? It's an interesting question to think about. What kinds of sounds maybe dinosaurs made? So one of the ways scientists think about this is they look at the structure of the skulls of dinosaurs and looking at the openings and where they are and where air could have moved through. And using that, they're able to construct computer models to figure out maybe what they sounded like. Now, basing that with that and what animals do today and why they make sounds, like animals today make sounds for communication between members of a species. They make sounds to defend themselves, to scare things away. They might make a sound, I don't know, there are all sorts of reasons, but so they try to come up with reasonable scenarios why a dinosaur might be making a sound based on not only the structure, but those behaviors. And so if they're knowing the particular species of dinosaur maybe lived in groups, it's like, okay, well, if a dinosaur lives in a group, if it made sounds, maybe it was for communication between the members. That's why they're coming up with those possible answers to, did dinosaur roar? Did it chirp? Did it whistle? Did it sort of make more of a like trumpeting sound? And all of those across the diversity of dinosaurs have been brought forth as possible theories around dinosaurs. And I know we hear the roars of Tyrannosaurus Rex, but there's so many different kinds of dinosaurs, and each one may have sounded differently, I would guess.
You're not going to demonstrate them, Janine? I was waiting for you to pull one of those out, but maybe not.
No, I don't have any trumpeting with me today.
Oh, that would have been very fun. And we have our next question, maybe thinking more about motion of dinosaurs, from Drew, age 6, who wanted to know if you know how fast could a pterodactyl fly?
Ooh, I hadn't even really thought about that before.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you think about how fast do they run? Like it's always the ground animals, how fast they run. And how fast they fly, I would think it would be, you could look at it in proportion to animals that fly today. how they fly, and the size of the animals that were flying. So if you take, let's think of a pterodactyl you might have a wingspan, I would say bigger than most large birds of prey today. And actually upwards of some even the size of airplanes. And usually they didn't flap a lot. They were more gliders, as far as we know, based on looking at their bones and their muscles, it suggests that they were more gliders than flappers. I would picture a soaring, I don't even know how fast birds necessarily fly, but a soaring animal.
Yeah.
Right? I'm thinking like
I was thinking like, you think about the way the albatross moves across an ocean, right? They're very large birds with giant wingspans, and watching them today, they seem to just take their time most of the time because they go long distances. And some of the pterosaurs would have been in that same mode, just gliding on the thermals with the warm air pushing them up, and they would just kind of move really slowly unless they were diving into the ocean trying to catch fish. And that's probably where they would go the fastest, that motion of going straight down, trying to catch something to eat. And again, Susan's right on it. Like, you look at the way birds do that today, it would be very much on that same order. I don't think it would be particularly like supersonic fast. It would just be as quick as they need to move to catch the fish that they're trying to catch.
Yeah.
Excellent. I like that idea, of comparing animals we might be more familiar with today to help us understand ones from the past. A great, great strategy. And for our next question, Oliver, age 4, would like to know if you know who found the first dinosaur fossil or what the first dinosaur fossil was?
You know, there's a couple ways to think about this. Like, we know that humans across human history have been finding dinosaur fossils. You know, people long, long ago told stories about dragons and weird creatures, and those were probably based on these weird bones people found, and like they were so big or they were just weird looking and they didn't match any animals that were currently around. So those legends from different cultures lead scientists to think that lots of different people were finding fossils of
giants
dinosaurs.
And cyclops could be explained by these bones, and dragons, of course. I think dinosaurs, as we kind of think of dinosaurs today, when the general public was starting to think about dinosaurs, was the mid 1800s. And then it was the late 1800s, like 1890s, that there was really a dinosaur fossil boom, almost like instead of the gold rush, it was a dinosaur rush where people were heading out to like the American West and really looking for a lot of dinosaur fossils then. So it was really, I would say 1850s to late 1800s that people realized they were looking at ancient animals that did exist and live today. And that's when they came around. I think one of the earliest ones, because a lot of them were in the American West, I think was Iguanodon was one of them. We were mentioning that before. And I think even, I mean, all the classics, that's why they're classics, is because they've been around a long time. We've known about them for a while. Those are some of the first ones that were found.
Yeah, Iguanodon definitely is an early one. And some of the famous fossil hunters from that time, there was, you know, Mariani. And of course, we had like the famous fossil hunters of the West that you're talking about, Edward Cope, and with his rival there, Marsh. I always forget his
right.
But they did have this sort of,
and they were competing. Who could find more fossils? Who could find more new species? And they each had their patronage. Like one was going to, you know, one natural history museum and the other to the other, and it was a great fossil race. So it was a really interesting time period in natural history.
Awesome, that's very exciting. I'm thinking of like the gold rush, but in dinosaur form, which is very exciting. And our next question, I think, is kind of an interesting one, maybe because of the apparent similarity in appearance between these two animals. But we have a question about, did the rhinoceros evolve from the Triceratops?
Wow, you know, that is an interesting thought, right? So I've got Triceratops on my shirt here. This is yes, a drawing of our Tyrannosaurus Rex that's here at the museum, we nicknamed him Cliff. But these animals have some similar sort of lifestyles, right? They're very like tank-like, they've got horns, they're low to the ground, they're heavy, but they're not closely related. Triceratops, we know it went extinct right about 65 million years ago, and rhinoceroses weren't on our planet until much more recently with the rise of the mammals. And the only mammals that were around at the time of the dinosaurs were small, they're little animals. And the rhino is more closely related to the small mammals that were around at the time rather than this animal, even though they have similar lifestyle. And it's really, you think about, they probably both were dealing with large predators in wide open spaces and evolved similar strategies and body plans to defend themselves from getting eaten by large carnivores. Yeah, but it's a really interesting observation to think about. They both have this sort of interesting body plan.
Excellent. And it looks like we have some extreme, I guess the extremes in terms of dinosaurs. So we have one question here about what was the biggest dinosaur, and then one about which one was the smallest dinosaur.
Okay. Susan, do you want to take big and I'll take small?
Sure. If you can pronounce it, yeah, I'll start with the big ones. So the biggest ones are the long necks overall, and the biggest long necks are, and we're actually every couple of years we're finding a new one. They're usually from South America, or found in current South America, and they have names like Argentinosaurus, Titanosaurus, Suprasaurus, and those are all from basically nose to tail, are about the length of 3 school buses. So I think that's around like 150 feet and weighing many tons, dozens of tons, hundreds. I'm not even sure actually of my tonnage, but again, they were the largest animals by far and away to ever walk on the earth. And I read something the other day, they were saying after they grew to a certain size, they had no natural predators. They were just a T-Rex wouldn't even bother coming near it. It couldn't make a dent in it. And their tails were pretty powerful. I mean, they weren't aggressive. They didn't eat meat, but if a T-Rex came too close, one flick of the tail and they'd knock a T-Rex flying. So very impressive animals that are just beyond the size of anything we could imagine today.
Awesome size. All right, so the smallest dinosaurs we know of right now, there are a few that are chicken size, maybe a little bit bigger, and they would have just weighed, like house cat, 10 pounds, 12 pounds, maybe 15 pounds. There's Gallimithius, which that one is like the chicken mimic. That one's a good one to know. It is about the size of a chicken. And then there's the Compsognathus, which is a little bit larger, like small dog size-ish. Both of these animals walked on 2 legs, had 3 toes, and generally, we now know, had feathers. So all these very small two-legged, 3-toed dinosaurs across dinosaur history, they either had proto-feathers or full-on feathers, depending on where they are in time. And that's kind of cool to think about, that if you saw them, you would be like, that's a weird-looking bird.
Ooh, that sounds really interesting. And I think it just kind of brings up this idea that there's so many animals in that dinosaur family. Do you all, by any chance, have an idea about how many species of dinosaurs there are, according to Charlie, Patrick, and Benjamin?
Well, we were just talking about this before we came on live. There's around a little over 1,000 named species of dinosaurs, and that's based on fossil evidence, and it's growing every day. Susan and I were just talking about a paper that came out last week about 2 new long-necked dinosaurs from South America. So every season, paleontologists are going out looking for fossils, and they're looking for them around the world, right? So it's not just here in the US, but Africa, Asia, even toward the poles. They're looking for dinosaur fossils, and the amazing things that they find every year, just like, there's a huge paleontology conference in the fall, and the papers roll out, and we try to keep up.
And there's the number of animals that existed then there's gonna be at least as many dinosaurs then as there are numbers of mammals, species of mammals today, or reptiles or whatnot, and possibly even more. A lot of people talk about, based on the climate at the time, that it was such a rich environment that there might have even been a more diverse number of animals that existed 100 million years ago. But all the numbers of animals that exist today, there were, at least that many that were living 100 million years ago. So, and we're just, pun intended, scratching the surface of how many dinosaurs there are, with thousands, over 1,000 named.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most exciting things about paleontology is there's always new information. There's new information about new species. There's new fossil finds of species was already named, but you find more evidence that leads you to think a little bit more about what the dinosaur was like, or maybe some behaviors you didn't know before, or new locations it was found in. So all of this information adds to the work that paleontologists are doing to try to understand these animals across time.
I'm thinking, even when we think about across time, dinosaurs and animals aren't the only thing that's changed, right? Our planet has changed a lot too. And we have an interesting question here about Pangaea, and whether when we were a supercontinent, if dinosaurs could roam all over, or did they tend to stay in one place?
Yeah, so when we were one big continent, things were sort of still localized to areas on the giant continent. You think about it stretched across half the globe, and there would have been regions where the temperature was different from one place to another, and there would have been different environments across it. But it is interesting to look through time as the continent split into two big chunks, and the evolution of the different groups once they were split. There were some definite different directions that were taken from the animals that ended up being sort of North and South America versus Asia and Europe and Africa. Some interesting differences there.
Excellent. And thinking about some of the really large animals that lived during the similar time of the dinosaurs, we have a question here about if you know whether the Quetzalcoatlus was the largest flying thing of all time.
Yes, so far, as far as we know. Yeah, Susan, you're on mute right now, but
Sorry, I was whistling. Yeah, the Quetzalcoatlus, they liken it to the size of a 747. So think of a jumbo jet, and that was like a living, breathing, flying animal through the sky. Yeah, that was probably the biggest, and that was a reptile. I mean, that was a flying reptile. It wasn't a dinosaur. There were some possible flying dinosaurs. Those were most likely tree gliders, jumping more from one place to another. But the ones that really ruled the sky were those marine reptiles. And yeah, I can't say it any better than you did, Christina. The Quetzalcoatlus was definitely the biggest one that we know of.
Right, and I was reading a paper about it that they were trying to figure out how it got off the ground because it was so big and the wings are so long, and the study really did some modeling with computer models to figure out where it would have put its kind of like the front of its wings to kind of launch itself off of that. I don't think there was many answers there, but there are definitely lots of questions about how it got up off the ground. Did it just launch itself off something, or could it propel itself from a flat surface? And there'll be more fossil finds before we can really answer that one.
And thinking about fossil finds, Julietta, age 9, was curious about if you can find dinosaur fossils in the ocean.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, you can find. Well, it's hard to find things in the ocean in general, but there were definitely animals that were living in oceans. There were some dinosaurs that lived in the water or spent a lot of time in water. But a lot of the kind of classic animals that we think of as living in the water at the time were the one, so a plesiosaur or an ichthyosaur. They have "saur" in their name, which refers to, makes it sound like a dinosaur. They were actually reptiles as well. So they were marine reptiles a lot. Mosasaur, again, a marine reptile. And so most of the time, a lot of the animals that were like the big animals out in the ocean were usually marine reptiles, but there were dinosaurs that were out there. Spinosaurus is one we've recently found to spend most of its time hunting in the water, kind of like an alligator, except really big. Spent a lot of its time in the water as well. And that's a new find. We didn't know that, and we learned that it looked like it swims really well. So it was probably in the water, but that Spinosaurus most likely in rivers and lakes and not oceans. But yeah, there were, anywhere you see, we've got mammals that live in the water, in the air, and on land. And we've got birds that spend time in the air and on land and in the water. And so there are dinosaurs that spent time in the water, in the air, and the land. So there are a lot of them.
I will say it's difficult to look for fossils in the water. I mean, paleontologists spend great majority of their time looking for in areas where there's exposed rock and it's easy to look. Under the ocean, I mean, there's a huge, vast land there to be explored in lots of ways, and there's just lots of challenges to doing any exploration under the ocean. So that's not a rich fossil hunting area right now. Maybe someday, if someone can come up with some new technologies to help paleontologists look under the water more readily. Yeah.
But places that were underwater 100 million years ago, many of them are now above water. So out west, there was a giant inland sea. It was huge. It was half the size of North America. And now it's not there. And so we can see marine animals on land now. We can dig them up on land. So, we can see some of it, but not underwater normally, as Jean said.
I know there was like two parts to that question. I'm trying to figure out which part we were really going to answer, but we answered it.
No, and that was a really good point that, our world keeps changing. So you never know what might be easier to find later on. And I was just looking at the time, and it looks like we're almost out of time. So I'm going to end with one last question. Since we started the program today talking a little bit about your experiences on dig sites, we have one question here from, I believe, Jake H5, who wants to know, what should he do if he wants to become a paleontologist?
Stay curious, friend. That's the first one, right? Just really keep asking great questions, do lots of exploring. But as you get older, really focusing in on taking science and math and seeing where it leads you. Paleontologists come from all kinds of science. Some are more into chemistry or more into physics, thinking about how things move and why they move the way they do, the chemistry of the fossilization process, maybe the biology of things, the DNA. So there's lots of branches of science that feed into paleontology. So taking lots of different science as you get older would be a great first step to thinking about your journey as a paleontologist.
And you can find digs to go on. There are some out west where you can join up with a paleontologist and maybe visit a site or check out a site. There's some public sites, there's some private sites that you could do, but it is possible. Wyoming has a lot of different places you can often find. Thermopolis out there is one of the big dinosaur privately owned, and then they serve the public out there, out in Wyoming as well. So there's a lot of places you could check out a dig, see if you like it too.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan and Janine. We're going to say goodbye to you all, but thank you so much. And I want to thank all of our viewers today for sticking with us for so many amazing questions. I really wish we had twice as much time because we had so many wonderful questions that we were not able to get to. And if that was one of you, I'm so sorry. But what I can say is that we do more of these programs throughout the week, every week. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the upcoming programs and whether we'll be having another Ask a Scientist dinosaur or other topics, you can visit our website by going to www.mos.org/mosathome. And if you would like to learn about how you can help support the museum to keep doing programming like this for people around Massachusetts and really all over the country and world, you can visit our website at engage.mos.org/welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will catch you at the next one.